Good morning, good afternoon, fifth grade. This is Mission 6, Lesson 5. We're continuing with coordinate planes today, but we're going to be moving our focus away from the individual plots in the line, and we're going to be examining the lines that our plots create and how those lines interact with other lines on the coordinate, including our x and y axis. There are three key terms for today's lesson. Let's go ahead and define each of these terms, and then we will draw an example of what each will look like. These are three different types of lines or relationships between lines that we're going to see today. Parallel lines, we know from our geometry unit, are two lines that will never meet. And let's draw two examples of parallel lines in the box over here. Those two lines will never meet. These two lines will never meet. As far as we can keep extending these lines in any direction, they will never touch each other because they are parallel. Next, we have intersecting lines. Intersecting lines do meet. Two lines that meet at a point. And you kind of think of this like intersection. When two roads meet each other, we call that an intersection. Let's draw two examples of intersecting lines over here. These two lines meet right here at this point. They are intersecting, and these two lines meet at this point right here. Therefore, they are also intersecting lines. A more specific type of intersecting line is called a perpendicular line. Now, perpendicular lines are intersecting lines that form four right angles. Intersecting lines, or perpendicular lines, will look like this. These two lines meet at this point right here, but they also create 1, 2, 3, 4 right angles. You can think of perpendicular lines as lines that meet to create this big plus sign here, creating 4 right angles where you can draw a square right in the middle of where they all meet, and it will create, again, 1, 2, 3, 4 right angles. Let's pause here to make sure we all have these three definitions and examples either typed or written into our notes. All right, here we're going to plot some points. Similar to how we've been doing the past couple of weeks, but we're going to create some lines and we're going to see what the relationship of those lines are. Are they going to be parallel, intersecting, or perpendicular? So for video number 1, Izuku is on the run from All for One. I Googled My Hero Academia characters. This is what it gave me. I'm not sure if this scenario even makes sense with the context of the show, but we're going to go for it. So Izuku gives us 5 different coordinates. Check that, 4 different coordinates to search and help find him. Let's plot each of the coordinates on our grid. If you're in Google Slides, you can drag the letters onto your coordinate. If you're in person, you can just write the letters directly onto your coordinate plane. Remember, we have to crawl before we can climb. Point A, and what I actually like to do on my chart here is right next to X, I'm going to write crawl, just a little reminder. And next to y, I'm going to write climb. So for point A, I know I need to crawl 1, 2, 3, and climb 1, 2, 3, 4. And right here is where point A will be. For point B, I have a crawl of 5 and a climb of 1, 2, 3, 4. Point B, right there. For C, I have a crawl of 7, 5, 6, 7, and a climb of, again, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see our climb is the same for each of these. Point D, our crawl is 9, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and our climb is 1, 2, 3, 4. Point D. Let's make sure we have all those points plotted, and then we'll move on to the next step. For the next step, we're going to toggle back and forth between we do number 1 and we do number 2, because we do number 2 is going to ask us some questions about the points we just plotted on we do number 1. We do number 2 tells us to go back to slide 2 and drag the red line to connect the points that we plotted, or draw the line on paper. We will name this line, line W. And there are some questions about line W. Before we get to the questions, let's create line W. Now, I couldn't get a color that shows up red on my inverted screen, but pretend this is red. The color is not super important. We are going to draw a line that connects each of these points, starting with A, all the way to D. By dragging the line or drawing it, let's make sure we create this line. And again, it wanted us to name the line W. We already have an x-axis and a y-axis, but this is going to be W. Next, we have some questions to answer about line W. Number 1 asks us, is the line horizontal or vertical? 2 asks, is the line a straight line? Number 3 asks, how many units is the line away from the x-axis? And number 4 asks us, is this line parallel to the x-axis? Teachers, let's pick a stick, pause here and pick a stick for each of these 4 questions about our newly created line W. All right, welcome back. Let's see how we did. Question 1, yes, it is a horizontal line. Question 2, it is a straight horizontal line. How many units away from the x-axis is our line? If we count from the 0 point of the x-axis, it is 1, 2, 3, 4 units away from the x-axis. That is why all of the y coordinates are 4. Because when you climb up to 4 on the y-axis, you're climbing up 1, 2, 3, 4 units away from the x-axis. And finally, is this line parallel to the x-axis? If we draw another line representing the x-axis here, and check our definition of parallel to mean 2 lines that will never meet. Yes, both line W and the x-axis will never meet, no matter how far we drew them out, so they are parallel to each other. Let's take a moment to make sure we have our answers typed or written into our notes, and then we will move on. We do number 3, we're going to continue to examine this new line that we have created, line W. Let's go ahead and add another point to line W, point E, and we're going to add point E where the y-axis and line W intersect, which, again, if we remember from the beginning, The point where they intersect is going to be the point where the two lines meet, or line W and the y-axis meet. Okay, well, here's line W, and right there is the y-axis. So right there is where they meet. Teachers, let's pause here and pick a stick. What are the coordinates for our newly labeled point E, where the y-axis and line W intersect? The coordinates will be 0, 4. You have a crawl of 0 because you're not crawling at all. You don't have to take any steps forward. And then you're climbing. 1, 2, 3, 4 has a y value of 4, just like all the other points in our line. Next question are lines W and Y, right? So the Y being the y-axis and W being our newly created line. Are they intersecting, parallel, or perpendicular? Teachers, let's pause here and pick a stick. Students, refer back to your key terms page if you need to. These two lines are intersecting. Let's take this one at a time. We know they can't be parallel because they touch. Parallel lines can never meet. We know they're intersecting because they meet at a point, right? They meet at point E. Now, more specifically, perpendicular lines are intersecting lines that meet to form 4 right angles. Now, although lines W and the y-axis meet to form a right angle here and here, they don't meet to form any more right angles because point W stops right here. If point W kept going, then we'd have 2 more right angles and they would be perpendicular. But since it doesn't, these lines are only intersecting. Let's pause here, make sure we do number 3 all set in our notes, and then we will move on to our exit ticket. Our exit ticket is in 2 parts, but it's going to be very similar to the we do that we just completed together. Part 1, you're going to plot some coordinates, points, and connect them with a line. And then in part 2, you're going to answer some questions about the line that you've created. There are 4 crewmates in the EVCS green space. Let's plot their coordinates to see exactly where they are. Drag the red line to connect the points. If you're in the classroom, you can draw your own line. Let's plot the first point together. And again, let's remind ourselves that X is crawl and Y is climb. The first Among Us character is red. If you're in class, you also have the privilege of drawing your own Among Us characters. Red is a X or a crawl of 1, 2, 3, 4, and a climb of 1, 2, 3. And bear with me on my crewmate drawing here. Kind of looks like that's not bad. So there is our first coordinate point. Once you plotted the rest and created your line, you then have 1, 2, 3 questions to answer about the line that you've created, line W. After you've done that, make sure to turn in your notes. And tomorrow we'll work on coordinate planes that are broken into fractions.